Okay, good morning, Professor Tootle.
Good morning.
Hey, we've got our producer with us today,
I know. How
Tony.
about that, Tony?
Tony, thanks for
Good
being
to
here.
see
And
you.
we've got our researcher. The only person
I
we're missing
know.
is our legal team.
Yep. It's great to see we're getting the band back together.
It is. Speaking of the band, what's the name of your new album you just released?
The Quarter Deck by
The Quarter
Cosigner.
Deck. And
Yeah.
what? There's some subtitle. It's by some band or you or what's the
Cosigner is the name of the band. Yeah. But
co-signers?
Quarter
Okay.
Deck is from Moby Dick. It's a chapter in Moby Dick, and it's the chapter where Ahab tells Starbuck that he requires a little lower layer, meaning you gotta peer beneath the surface and look at
Wow.
what's really going on.
You're
You,
deep. What are you?
that's an exclusive.
Judaism?
I don't think I've ever told anybody that, but that is almost all my records have at least some Herman Melville reference. Uh,
Really?
yeah, just hidden in there somewhere. So uh,
Nice. Nice. Well, we're unplugged today, and that means my intent. Sorry to give you a promo, and Jake's even given the link to it. Um,
nice.
my intent is to never go public with this, um,
Okay.
and the reason for it is because I want to see if I can tease out something from you or me that isn't public. How are two guys, what do they talk about? And we've talked a lot, hundreds of times over the last 4 or 5 years, and superficially a couple of years before that. I want to know if there's a difference between real life right now, because we don't think this is going to go public. We're not going to release it to the world. It's just us versus how Professor Tootle is interviewed by John Brackney, whoever he is. And because we always have a face. And the reason I want to go unplugged, at least for now, and we'll vote at the end of this, by the way. In 45 minutes, we'll to an hour, we'll vote and determine. And it's a Republic vote. That means 3 out of 4 got to do it. Not 50-50 because there's 4 of us. So 3 out of 4 have got to do it. Um, I hope it actually does go live, but I'm not sure. I'd rather be perfectly authentic. So let me give you an example. Is this okay? Do you mind being
Yeah.
unplugged?
Yeah. It's fine.
Okay. Racism. We've had a whole show on it. In fact, we've had 2 or 3 shows on it, and it's a subtle. Well, not so subtle. If you have a bunch of Democratic liberal friends like I do, they really believe not only is Trump racist, but most of his closest advisors are. In fact, is it possible that a ton of America is racist? They believe that. They just think the stuff he says, or what are those things called? Bird calls, cat calls. They're
Dog whistles.
dog whistles. Thank you. They're dog whistles, and they know the code, and they are racist. And I'm not willing to go that far. Not because I'm politically correct. I just don't want to think of my family and friends and neighbors and 45% of society as being racist. So I want an answer from you. And then this is why I would want it to be private. We may never share this answer. Or maybe we'll go, of course, we want to share this answer. People should be thinking about the truth, not campaign slogans and angles and stuff. What's your guess? Is America racist? Is Trump racist? It's a theme of this whole damn election that we're not talking about like this, I guess. Maybe there's some shows that talk about it. I don't know. Liberals say he's racist. Conservatives say you guys are nuts. Racist. You guys are racist. Can you talk to me about that? And this is just one example. I've got like 5 or 10 examples about Tootle Talks Unplugged.
Well, I guess I'll stick with what Paul Ryan said, which is that it's the textbook definition of racism. So
Well,
one thing that Donald this was when he was running for office, and he said this guy is going to do this thing because he is Mexican. And Paul Ryan was asked, like, is that racist? And Paul Ryan said, yes, that's the textbook definition of racism when you ascribe motive to
there's
someone
nothing
based
true
on nothing
characteristic.
more
Yeah.
than their perceived racial characteristics. So from before he was ever president, when he was first candidate, he has acted in a racist way.
Oh, but he's done
Um,
that consistently then. By that definition, he's gone straight through. There's hundreds of
yes,
examples like that.
yes, exactly. That's kind of my point.
So
So
Trump's racist.
um, he ascribes motives based on perceived racial characteristics. He does do that, and that
My
is
Republican friends will say, yeah, he's joking though. He's doing that to get a rise, an overreaction from people.
he might be doing it sometimes, but but it doesn't really matter. When you're the president of the United States or a candidate for office, um, if you're going to be joking, you need to make it clearer that you're
And
joking. And
and more
you,
fun or
pardon?
more funny. More fun or more funny too. What's even fun or funny about it if it's a joke?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example of like y- uh, how people sometimes talk behind closed doors. We're gonna have Derek on in a while. Like one of the sort of standard jokes between friends would be like, "Oh, you say this," and you're like, "Oh, that's racist," but you don't really mean it that this person is actually a racist. But you're joking about the fact that everyone calls everything racism nowadays. So
Right.
but that would be how friends joke. But that's not exactly what Trump has done. And there are examples of times when he's done that. And in terms of racists in his orbit, that is certainly true. He does not draw a clear line, as many other people do, and exclude racists from his orbit.
Yeah.
Um,
So I don't like calling
but
anybody.
as for the American people, how many Americans are actually like
Yeah.
racist, whatever? Oh, I think we're probably cruising at 10-15% of
Is it
America are racist.
disproportionate number of those conservatives are now in the Republican Party, or is it split
Well, I would
across?
say 0% are conservatives, because if you're a conservative, you're supposed to be conserving the ideal that all men are created equal. So by definition, no racist. There's no such thing as a patriotic racist. You can't be. Um,
God, I love this. Maybe we will go public on this so far. But so you haven't called. I don't like calling anybody a racist. I really don't. I mean, I guess if there's somebody that's like,
I don't know, when somebody says something that who acts consistently in a racist manner. I mean, you're just describing what is. I don't.
so it's okay for to call somebody a racist.
Sometimes
Okay,
you
so
don't call everybody a racist,
right, right, right. But you're
but
calling President
certainly,
you're, on this show. You're calling President Trump a racist. Period.
I think there's enough evidence of his public life since, I mean, we're
So you
going
don't think
on.
it's not over the top then when liberals call him a racist? It's actually a fair point.
Well, I think there are also degrees of racism. Not all racism is the same, but I think it is fair to call him a racist. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's switch gears slightly, just slightly. Is he a
Pardon?
misogynist? President Trump a misogynist?
Boy, that's I would he certainly, I mean, much like his racism, he exhibits this trait of ascribing motives based on perceived categories. So
Mhm.
you could almost say he's an everything-ist,
Yeah.
uh, um, because in
Well, I'm
that
not sure he's an optimist.
right, but well, I don't know, but in some ways maybe he is, but um, he is someone who always ascribes motives based on um, you know biologically immutable facts that that are not you know not determinative. I'm using big words. I'm sorry,
Right.
but
Well,
I'm
speaking of big
trying to
words, I
make
know
this grammatically correct sentence.
you're not a semantics person, but
Yeah.
a professor of semantics of words. But what's the difference between sexism and misogyny, or misogynistic and sexist, or whatever the two equivalents are? Is there a difference?
Um, Sexism is discrimination on the basis of sex. Misogyny is actual hatred of women. Uh,
Okay. I'm
and
glad I asked.
yeah, I don't know. I think a sexism is a little clearer. Uh, Misogyny, I would probably go with yes, because he does seem to, eh, it does probably lapse over into um, abuse and hatred, um, certainly on occasion.
Yeah. Okay,
Um,
so those are two really uncomfortable, unpleasant.
but he treats men the same way. I don't know if that's a sort of weird thing, which is I don't know if he's pretty abusive to I mean his abuse, maybe, I don't know, let's look on the bright side. Maybe we could say that the thing that he hates is anyone who doesn't support him. He
Right.
attacks. And when he attacks women or minorities, he it comes out as racism, sexism, and misogyny. But I think if you were a as long as you are a supporter of him,
That
I don't
overrides.
think you exhibit any of those traits.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one more major group that's similar to racism, but it's different. Immigration. The stuff he says about immigration from the time he came out to the escalator to this morning, I think, in his speech in Detroit, and probably to, this afternoon when he's in Colorado, it's just like over the top bad, isn't it? It's just really not healthy for the human soul or for a community or for state or a country, nation state, or even the world. It's a bad vibe, isn't it? But people seem
Yes.
to like it.
Well, I mean, what people like is the wrecking ball. They like the fact that he's speaking bluntly, uh, uh,
They
and
do like that. They like a tough guy. They wanna
yeah,
they
and
wanna
they like their hatreds being inflamed.
people like their hatreds being like in a world like a, what is that, WWV, Worldwide Wrestling kind of hatred or real
Yeah.
hatred?
Well, I mean, it lapses over into reality. That every human being is capable of good and evil, and we are often tempted by circumstances to engage in either like what's good about us or what's bad about us. And so um when everybody likes the idea of a simple answer and heroes and villains, and populists can build on those natural human characteristics and uh, get people good and lathered up and hating and angry.
So should we be concerned about that? Is it a
Should
kind of
always
a
be. Oh, absolutely, especially in a representative government. I mean, this
do
is
you mean
where.
in a William F. Buckley kind of way? Do you mean in a who was that guy that ran for Buchanan kind of way? Cultural rot? I mean that it's important to have character? Do you mean it in the I think Reagan kind of way too? Do you mean it in that way or something else? Why
Well, I
is it
think no. I think it's first in culture is downstream, or politics is downstream of culture. So the idea that culture has no effect on politics is simply not true.
right?
And when you have a representative form of government, it's going to represent the culture of the people who are being represented. And so anything that is contributing to a negative political culture um, is going to itself make things worse once that stuff gets into politics. Then the other sort of bad part about it is that it's it's really easy to make people bad, and it takes a lot of long-term work to make people good.
Are you
And
quoting
it
Aristotle or Plato or something on that or
I don't know.
in the Bible? I
Just
mean, how,
me. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have made this point before. It's not original with me, but it takes a long time to build a house, and knocking one down is easy.
that's going
And
right to Plato.
so, you can work on something and work on something and work on something. It doesn't, and the easiest thing in the world is to come in with a sledgehammer and just destroy it all. You know,
But people want this sledgehammer. What are they trying to destroy? What are 45% plus of Americans trying to destroy?
well, the biggest thing that they're trying to destroy is um, the cultural impositions of radical Democrats who
Okay.
manage, and that kind of intrusion on their lives convinces them that there's no point in um, preserving the existing system, and that's what leads to that kind of cynicism.
Okay.
When
Let's talk about a couple of those. Isn't
oh
well, how
going
many do you want?
oh, go ahead. Right.
They hate it. I mean, they just abhor it to the deepest culture. I've talked to a ton of them. The trans issue, they are really, really upset about this. Do they know trans people?
Pardon?
Do they know trans people? Do you know trans people?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I mean, I
Yeah,
was part of Log Cabin Republicans for years, so I worked
oh,
with trans
yeah.
people.
I only know a couple, and I know a couple children of dear friends of mine, and I know one I've met because we had an hour-long conversation about it, and God, I'm horrible at it. It's still new to me. But he or she, that's what I mean. I'm so bad at it, I don't even know what to call him or her. But it was really interesting. It kind of made me more empathetic and more compassionate and more understanding, even though I can't do the right pronoun, which I kind of feel bad about because I think it's disrespectful. But I'm telling you, trans is one of the key issues in this campaign. Agree or disagree?
Um, agree, but you should probably uh, make sure and distinguish that the vast majority of Americans have absolutely no problem with adult trans people having full,
Good.
happy, healthy lives.
Are you sure about that? When
Yes.
Project
Yeah.
2025, they talk about the value of traditional families and how we all got to go back to that, and that would probably lead to adoptions.
I know,
Which,
but Jake can pull this up on uh, uh, the Pew Institute, you know, public attitudes towards gay people, homosexual, trans people, and whether or not they should have full political equality and that sort of thing.
and
And
that's marriage.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and you'll see that it's a only a tiny minority of people who wouldn't want full political equality for
I think it's a
adult
majority of
trans.
the activists in the Republican Party today.
In the Republican Party, even the activists. I don't even know if I'd say that.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay. 'Cause
um,
I hear it all the
I'm
time.
talking about only adults,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because the great controversy is with kids and medical treatments
yeah.
and things like consent for parents. Um, yeah,
64% of Americans. Yeah, but that's a lot lower than you said, Professor. If it's 64%, if you take the Republican Party,
but
it would
that's a pretty broad spectrum of if you look at um, that whole thing, that's 64% that favor a broad spectrum of protections. When you start looking at the individual things, you'll see that there are some of those issues that are 90%.
really. Okay. Well,
I'm
that's
sure. I don't remember. I haven't looked at it lately. I'm sure this is a more recent number that I've looked at, but if anything, I would suspect it's gotten better, not worse over the years.
talk to me about abortion. You and I have had a show or two on that. We had one on LGBTQIA as well. But on abortion, isn't it really what this whole election is about? But we argue about all sorts of other stuff, or do you really think it's economy and a little bit of foreign policy and a little bit of jobs and maybe oil and gas drilling, maybe political correctness, or what's this election really about? But talk about abortion for a second, then transition to what you think this election's really about.
I think that it's probably about 20% of the electorate would say, I mean, that abortion is their number one issue. But if you take people who abortion is their number one issue, it's uh, there's a vanishingly small number of people who would be switching their votes on the issue.
Switching their votes. That's an interesting distinction. You mean like Democrats and liberals are already pro-choice and they're just going to vote pro-choice down the line. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
So a real issue would be, to me, what is it that swings uh, your person who might be a Trump voter, but is just trying to decide between Harris and Trump. But I also think it's also I just think it's a mistake um, to the way people talk about, in particular, the Supreme Court decisions involving abortion. The, I mean, I don't know a lot of swing voters who I've discussed abortion with who kind of understand the, how the Supreme Court works. I mean, the craziest thing is when you're talking about undecided voters, they tend to be the lowest information voters. So they're
right.
often voting on things that are wrong, just factual errors. And how they feel about things. So they tend to be the most, in some ways, the most frustrating voters to talk to because
Yeah,
this,
they just
I mean,
really,
they'll literally say things like, I'm voting for Harris because, and it'll insert conspiracy theory, or I'm voting for Trump because, and then insert conspiracy theory. It's almost
well,
never
there's
enough.
something like 20% of voters. Jake, could you see if this is true? I think it was 20% of voters think Democrats overthrew Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, that's a dumb statement. But if 20% of people believe that because that's simply wrong. Period. Huh. So, Professor, this is another reason I want this to be unplugged and not open for public consumption. I think Roe, the complete overturn of Roe, because of Dobbs, and stuff that like Texas is suing um, uh, over abortion, over I mean crazy stuff, and they want to do surveillance of women, and they want to punish other states that are protecting women that want to have an abortion out of state. They want to keep their own citizens from. I mean, on and on. There is a ton of bad examples of when an overturning of a constitutional right, although it was judge made right, which I don't like. It wasn't legislative right. It was a judge made right of privacy, and Roe was overturned after 50-ish years. Was it 50? Yeah, 50-ish years. I think that's a big deal. And I think I think it's going to be a landslide against Trump. I think Harris is going to win in a landslide, popular and electoral. And it's going to be because of abortion. And everybody will be scratching their heads 3 weeks from now and go, how come the polls were all wrong? That's my prediction. Now we can either keep on abortion for a second, or we can switch to prediction on the presidential election this fall. Your choice.
Um, I don't know. Like I said, it's going to be whatever is front of mind of the least predictable group of voters in America, who tend to break late. So, uh, it, I, depending on how you feel about abortion or not, you only get to vote once. So, um, every person's vote counts the same. And just because you are excited or your friends are excited. The other thing that does also happen is that sometimes that zealous advocacy will turn off
Off others. Yeah.
others. So, I mean, I can tell you that, like, I have certain friends who are real radicals on many um, left of center issues. And when I see what they write, it makes me want to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Like, nothing makes me want to vote for Trump like leftists. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm no different than anybody else. Like,
It happens all the time. I see it. I'm
right.
yeah.
It's and that's something that Professor Brasino pointed out, 8 years ago, where I've quoted him a million times with this, was you must love Trump because this is how you get more Trump. You guys acting like this is what creates that cynicism and anger that says that I guess I have to vote for Trump if this is what you're like, you know.
That
Um,
was Brasino pointing out among his friends or colleagues that are liberal. Saying,
yeah, I
and,
mean, because he was not a Trump supporter, but like he was just like, I see the left like driving people into voting for Trump,
yeah.
and so he wanted to say back to them, like, you must love Trump
Yeah.
because this is how you get more Trump, is you guys acting like this,
Yeah. I see that all the time myself. And I probably unintentionally, obviously, because unintentionally probably do the same thing myself occasionally or frequently. I hope not, but who knows?
Yeah.
Let's switch gears slightly again and talk about language.
Mhm.
Stuff that the president says and other people, maybe what Harris says in publicly, you think it means something no matter what. If a public statement is made, and I guess that would apply at a micro, tiny little of importance for you and I talking today.
Mhm.
If this goes online and people are able to say it, that means something. It's not just a joke, or words matter, right? Or that
Yeah, we're capable of being sophisticated human beings. I mean, yeah, some of us have an antenna that's broken, and everything we hear, we are too sensitive about. But, you know, people also are just mean sometimes. And it's, and they're, you're not being overly sensitive when you're noticing that someone is actually being mean. And it's not,
And you
it's,
don't want to be treated like dirt, so you push back and cancel
yeah.
or culture, or be around. I don't want to be around you. You're a jerk.
Yeah, yeah. We're all in charge of what goes on between our ears. So
So the same thing, I guess what I'm leading to is in the Access Hollywood tape in the 2016 election, or something that he said yesterday in the 2024 election. If it was in private in the locker room or on a hunting trip or an off-color joke in a, I don't know, in a dart game in a bar, uh, most of us understand there is a difference between palling around or being stupid in private versus what you're willing to say in public. Agree or
sure.
disagree?
Yeah, yeah. Context matters, and who you're with and how you're joking around, like all of that matters. But there are still some things that I have only said in sarcasm or only joked about, but never been serious about. Like I'm trying to, how do I put this? Sometimes when you say something offensive around friends, the joke is that your friends know that you don't actually feel that way, and thus it's funny.
Right.
That's an
Yeah.
important context. Um,
That's okay, or maybe even to be encouraged.
but if you are with people who are not, I mean, who are not your friends, and uh, and you're joking, there are a lot of, there's a lot of joking around that I just don't do also. Like
Right.
there, I mean, and I have friends who engage in really offensive uh, comedy
But
in
are they
public.
dirty jokes? Are they misogynistic jokes? Are they
Yeah,
racial?
that's the other thing, is you don't really have to be dirt. That's, in fact, I always think it's funnier if you're not being dirty. If you, I think it's amazing how offensive you can be without using any curse words.
Just
Um,
because you're, it's implied or it's
Well, you can be extremely descriptive without using any curse words, uh,
right.
or
Yeah.
using clinical terms as well. So, uh,
Well, so culturally, I guess I'm just trying to throw out a smattering of 6 or 7 different types of issues. We could also talk about guns, or we could talk about national defense. I mean, there's a ton of different ways our society is divided, and I'm trying to get a sense. Here's the. I guess I should have started with this. I want to know what's next. Say I'm right and Trump loses by a landslide. That actually may change something. The Republican Party may wake up and resurrect itself. But if it's close and he wins or loses, we're just going to keep fighting over all these issues again, aren't we? Aren't we still going to be talking about guns and abortion and gays and trans and Ukraine, and I mean it's just on and on. Doesn't aren't we just the same old battles going to continue right on going,
well, I'm not looking forward to the next 4 years, no matter who wins.
even if it's a landslide?
I, I don't,
That's not a trick question.
I don't care really, if it's a landslide or not. I sort of told myself, like, the good news is if Trump wins, that means I'll never have to see him again.
In
Um,
4 years, you mean? Yeah.
yeah, whereas if he loses, who knows? We might be stuck with him forever, you know?
As long as he's alive, or his
Yeah,
progeny here, yeah.
because his supporters are so vehement and also violent and vocal that it drives everybody out. It drives out all normal people out of the political process. Um,
Well, but there's a ton of people that are still Republicans and are still joining the Republican Party. My premise is they're not Republicans, though. They're a new type. They're mad about whatever they are mad about, but they're not any of the key private property rights, personal responsibility,
And that's
government
why
at the local
there is
level.
no Trumpism after Trump. Like the core of Trumpism is support of Trump. There is no ideology or belief system behind it.
But there, people are
And there's
joining the
certainly
party.
nothing that would distinguish it from the Democratic Party. I mean, there's no difference at all on, you know, between Trump and Harris on tariffs, on taxes, on entitlements, on the use of government, you know, uh,
Power. Yeah.
they, you, you're voting for, I mean, essentially two liberals with different policy agendas.
And so the best way to get that corrected, though, why have we done almost 100 shows over 3 years? I think it's been 3 years. Why? I mean, I know we like talking about this and we're friends and we hope somebody somewhere listens to it and maybe that will make a small spark or a difference somewhere. Plus, we just kind of have fun. So we don't really care if any of that happens. It'd be nice, but it's not our intent to do that. It's kind of like the
Yeah.
opposite of Trump. We're not making money. We're not trying to sell our coins or our shoes, or
Yeah.
we're not doing any. We're not saying crazy things to try to get somebody mad at us and spark. We're not. We're doing the opposite of good marketing. Why are we doing this, and what should we be doing starting November, whatever it is, third?
Well, we're the ones building the house that other people come in with a sledgehammer and destroy, but,
Okay.
you know, it's not our job to be reactionaries. One of the things that is important about having a set of beliefs, if they're political or non-political beliefs, is that you know what you're for. And if you keep acting according to your own beliefs, then your political enemies aren't the ones who determine who you are as a person.
Oh, I love that.
So what I like about this crew, I mean, if there's one thing that we all have in common, I think it's that we're not reactionaries. We're doing the long, slow work of building a civil society. And Trump may come and go, and that's not going to you know I'm never going to stop advocating for the application of the ideals of the Declaration through the Constitution. That my advocacy of all men are created equal is not dependent upon who happens to be in office.
I love that. There seems to be a divide that I'm still trying. I'm spending a lot of time over the years trying to identify not Trump voters, but what makes them tick or why they're so mad, and if they're mad and put it to a useful way, what would they accomplish? Uh,
Well, I mean, if I were to sum it up, what they're mad about is people messing with their lives and their children's lives. I mean, more than anything else, what activates you? I mean, I'll just tell you, like my my nephew tried to open a car lot, and it took him a year and a half to get his permit, and he had to fire everybody. And you're just like, why? The government regulation like shut down his business.
but that wasn't federal regulation. That was a
No,
local ordinance.
state. But what it makes you do is you just get so angry that you're like, I'm just voting against these people, the Democrats, right? And then or my sister tried to open a car lot, or essentially a parking lot in a city, and it took her 2.5 years because of regulations. Or I've had friends who, their kids are going through a hard time in school, and the school just sweeps in and proclaims that whatever, they're so lawsuit averse that whatever the proclaimed identity of the child is, here's the here's your drugs, here's your doctor, we're taking you away from your parent. And you're just like, the system sort of sweeps in and tries to interfere with you being a parent. Or you were a parent during COVID and you saw what what your kids were being taught, and you just are like, what? I want my schools to just be good, and in every one of these things, it's when the absurdity of the imposition affects you personally, that's when you get activated and say, I I I guess I have to vote for Trump.
Okay, well, you almost had me except for the last words. I get being mad. I mean, taking it. I'm going to take it to City Hall. That's so common that we all say it and have for centuries. Running for a city council person or mayor or firing the city manager or get rid of the police chief or all that stuff because you're mad at ordinances is a noble American thing to do. Go run for office, fix it, do a petition. But do
But
we
how
really?
many, I just want, like, how many Americans don't encounter or know some member of their family that doesn't encounter media institutions, educational institutions, or political institutions? I mean, and all of them controlled by, uh, uh, you know, an aggressive um, agenda associated with the Democratic Party. And some of these things can be small. Why am I watching this movie that's like offensive and over the top and it's political agenda? And why does it have to be every movie? you know like uh, why does it and I think that our friends on the left are not being honest when they don't seem to understand that it is just being shoved down your throat nonstop. And when you run across something that doesn't do it, it just like is so refreshing. Um, and
Well,
so
but wait, Kid Rock blowing up a case of Bud Light. Okay, now we're happy because somebody stood up to the man.
yeah, but I mean, I would say like that's a reaction, you know, like um, it's that's how the reaction manifests itself. Is you say like, all right, I'm done. Like these Budweiser's not listening to me, so I'm just going to
But
stop drinking their beer
but
and
I guess I'm
blow
going
it.
to push back a little bit. I agree with your major point on trans and kids. That's probably where the real fight is. But whoever that influencer was who was trans, that wasn't anything about kids. That was just a trans influencer enjoying Bud Light. And the next thing, we hate Bud Light. Really? We hate Bud Light?
But it's not because the guy is. It's the idea that every single thing in society, every single company, every single like must bow down to the Stations of the Cross.
Of
And people,
trans or
yeah,
some.
but and it doesn't really, and then it's just that it has to be infected in every part of your life. That's what people are rebelling against. It doesn't even necessarily have to be anti-trans, although I'm sure that there's for a subset that's what the case is. But there are a lot of people who are just angry because like they're just the
Oh,
frustration is, does it have to be everybody? Does it have to be everywhere?
yeah.
Like, can I escape from this uh, constant hectoring anywhere that I go? Or
Yeah.
do I have to constantly be bombarded?
So, Jake, here's a third reason why I wanted to do an unplugged. And remember, we get to vote whether this goes public or not. So, if all three of you want to do it and I vote no, we'll go public anyway. You said in a past show that you're going to vote up and down the Republican ticket minus Trump. You're going to write in somebody's name, but you're going to vote Republican because you're mad. You're mad at all sorts of stuff and you want to change. And so you're going to vote. I kind of have the exact opposite. I kind of want to vote Democratic up and down the ticket just to be over with Trumpism. I just want the Republican Party go away. I don't want to nurture it like you apparently do. I'm not attacking you. But I want to get that is the subtext for whatever you want to say. You don't even have to respond to that now. But just so you know, you irritated me enough where I need to cancel your votes by voting Democrat, which I don't want to do. But I
Well,
might.
aren't you
Voting
in
with
different states
now,
though?
whatever you'd like to talk about, Jake, jump in.
John, you can't cancel my vote. We don't live in the same state.
I know,
Yeah,
but it's principle, though, and there's, it's principle.
In principle, whatever.
yeah.
No, so John, I don't know if you have subscribed to the Dispatch yet.
I would like to lie to you and say I have, but I haven't yet. I
Oh,
want.
John.
Okay. So Tootle taught me many things when, he was my professor in graduate school. But I will say probably the greatest thing Tootle has ever done is get me to read and listen to the Dispatch.
Well, but I read almost all of it because
But
they.
you don't listen, you need to listen to Jonah Goldberg's The Remnant podcast.
All right, I don't
Okay.
do that often.
I don't know if Tootle shares the same opinion, but I think that The Remnant, Advisory Opinions, and then Nick Catoggio's Boiling Frogs newsletter are the most important things that the Dispatch does.
I would add the capitalism, the Wednesday
Yeah.
newsletter from Scott Lincecum is all by itself worth the subscription. That Wednesday newsletter, I'm amazed at what's in it.
And so you just echo their talking points, or is it just simpatico
No,
with your political philosophy?
No, I
no.
don't agree with any of them. Like, I mean, I have my differences with every single person who works at the Dispatch. So it's,
Okay, good.
yeah. And the same goes for, I would say, the Free Press too. Like, I mean, if you're going to subscribe, like pay for a subscription to something, like I think your first subscription should probably be the Dispatch, and your second one should probably be the Free Press. They do an amazing work too.
All right, keep going with your point, Jake.
Yeah, sorry.
No, so anyways, like, listening and reading to the Dispatch, like all of their media outlets, they are saying, they are better clarifying what I already believe. So they are helping articulate what I already believe, and it's great. So, anyways, Jonah has talked about this before. He talked about during the 2016 election when he and Steve Hayes were still working for when they were still working for Fox. The CEO of Fox News believed that they thought that Trump was going to lose. And so they're like, after Trump loses, we know that, Trumpism is a dead letter. And Jonah Goldberg and Steve Hayes were going to help kind of like rebrand Fox. And, we've got to like dig down on like being better conservatives. And that's what they were going to do. And that didn't happen. So even though I'm not going to vote for Kamala, okay, I still want the Republican Party to do well because I am hoping for a shellacking. Okay, I want Trump to get shellacked, and then I want the Republicans to win back like the Senate. Well, I want them to win back the Senate, hold on to the House, because then they can decide, okay, we've put him, he's been our candidate for 3 elections. He's never won the popular vote, but we're still doing great in the House and the Senate. So we need to move on from Trumpism now. Okay. I have faith that the Republican Party can get rebuilt because I know you say you kind of want the Republican Party to go away, but until another political party can raise enough money and support, that would give the Democrats like a uniparty control of the government. And no single party should have uniparty control. Like,
Yeah.
when the Republicans become the majority party again, I want the Democratic Party to be a really strong minority party so that they can balance out politics. The problem with the Republicans right now is they're technically the minority party, and they are a very weak, divided minority party, which is why the Biden administration has been able to get done as much as it has. We
So
need
I like
two healthy. Sorry, last point. We need
I,
two healthy political parties, and I think the Republican Party, when they have their come to Reagan moment and move on from Trump, that they can be that again.
I like your points, and you're being a forceful advocate of them. So good job. I'm with you most of it. I am. I think it's the same goal and two methods to get. So, and the reason I differ is that I am astounded every time I talk to a former Republican friend of mine who they're not advocating anything conservative anymore. They want Trump's speech in Aurora today. I haven't heard it. Obviously, he's going to do it in 45 minutes from now. Trump's speech is going to be immersing the federal government in a landlord dispute with a couple gang members and some the immigration policy I get, but he's going to go down in the micro about city council and mayoral politics. I don't want the president, any president in Aurora, Colorado today talking about that stuff. Zero, zilch, nada. And Republicans are going, yeah, about time we're fixing this. I don't want the president to be involved in whether a Safeway, somebody's running out with a cart full of groceries. Is it important? Is it culturally important that we're not arresting people these days? Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want the president to solve that. I want a local mayor and district attorney and county commissioners to build a bigger jail and hire more prosecutors and stop that. But I don't want the president involved in that at all because I'm a conservative. So anyway, Jake, you make great points. I'm really glad you did. Professor, counter me or Jake or whatever else you want, and then we're going to see if Tony has anything.
Well, I guess I was curious what Tony had to say. That was my next.
Oh, good. Great minds think alike.
I had to say. I was just wondering how he would weigh in.
Yeah, I really appreciate how you articulated that, John, because I don't want the president involved. And this is what gets me back every time in this conversation to saying I'm a freaking conservative and I never knew it, because local control, these kinds of things are things I believe in. This is crazy. It's crazy. And the only thing that I would really add to what Jake's saying is I still think we need more than two parties. I feel like the choices that my frustration with the political system is that everybody sounds the same and is the same. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. They're all owned by some corporate interests. Is the way it feels. I know there are actually good and great people that are in the government, and doing good things, but that's what got me sick in the first place. Is I'm just like, what real choice do we have? Like even right now, what real choice do we have? So I'm interested in there being, some semblance of another party or another voice, or and I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. That there needs to be some other voices articulated out there, because I think mostly what people are is fed up, with how government has not served them. How this government has not served them, and so part of this, like, hey, let's get on the Trump bandwagon, is a group of people who are just like, they're fed up. I don't know that they really even care about agree with anything Trump says. They just want something different, and on occasion he sounds different, so that's my thoughts, right?
Thanks.
Yeah,
Tom.
I think there is an opportunity for a third party if that third party were able to take match celebrity with a coherent ideology, and I think that the it wasn't the Lincoln Project, but the one to get ballot that was focused on ballot access that failed because it looked like it was I'm just blanking on the name.
No labels.
Yeah, the no label. Was it No Labels that had a pretty strong national?
Yeah, they were the ones talking about ballot access, but then they never nominated anyone.
They've sort of demonstrated that you could marshal enough money to get the ballot access required for a viable third party. And if they could take the next step, which would be get famous people to agree on a statement of principles, and then start running high-profile candidates, you could see a viable third party. In particular, if the Republican Party collapses in the wake of Trumpism, but once Trump is gone from the national stage, has Trump ruined the Republican name and brand to such an extent that people will never support someone with an R behind their name?
And yes, he has for a generation. I know, Jake, we disagree, but yes.
Well, I think that if there is no way that anybody could win in California calling themselves a Republican, like it just can't happen.
It could happen, but now it can't, and probably for a generation or more.
Right.
Yeah.
We're 20 years away from that.
Yeah. So, Professor, there's the No Labels Republican candidate was going to be, it was either Maryland, the Maryland governor, Hogan.
Hogan, yeah.
Hogan, and I listened to him on Meet the Press or something last Saturday, and he was boy, he was anti-Trump. I didn't know he was that anti-Trump, but I guess he's trying to get elected, and he won by, he's up by 30 points compared to Trump in that state. But he was the former head of the Republican Governors Association. I mean, he's not a wacko. I mean, he's a credible, thoughtful
Yeah.
guy. He's kind of libertarian socially, and
George W. Bush was president of the United States.
who's what?
Right? Like, you don't get any bigger. Mitt Romney was the nominee for the party. Like Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States. Paul Ryan was the vice presidential nominee. We're not talking about people who were not lightweights in the Republican Party, right? They're all still alive and they're all there.
And they're all against Trump.
Yeah.
Huh. And he's still going to get 45% plus of society.
Yeah. But I say that, based on the idea that he has 15 or 20% of America who supports him. That's not, I mean, you should, I guess when we get super depressed about this, it's like every now and then you got to remind yourself that like 85% of America doesn't like it.
Yeah.
But half of America feels like they have no choice. They feel like, as Tony said, they feel like they have no choice, that they've just been captured, or the metaphor that I've heard, that I have repeated, is you have a choice between a heart attack and a cancer. Which one will you pick? And that doesn't exactly make people enthusiastic,
Right.
because there are a lot of people who would rather choose exercise.
Right.
Rather than cancer or a heart attack.
Well, I'm shockingly, well, no, I'm always optimistic and kind of positive and upbeat. Even though some of my questions don't seem like that, I'm trying to spur conversation, but I'm pondering. And so I think it's next Friday, we're going to have a liberal friend of yours talk about why he's voting for Harris. I guess I don't think he said that, but I guess he's voting. Yeah, you're going to vote for Harris.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know what you're going to do. You've always kept your cards close to your chest.
Well, I've already voted, so I guess I.
Oh, have you? I'm voting tomorrow. Hopefully.
Yeah, my ballot came in the mail. Voted, mailed it off. It's already been counted. Even I got the text today that my ballot has already been counted.
And you keep it private. You've been pretty coy with me over the months.
Well, it's not so much that, it's that also voting in California is complex because we have propositions, and I would have to remember how I voted on every single thing.
I'm talking president. I don't care about.
For president? No, I didn't vote for Trump or Harris.
Or Harris. Damn, I didn't persuade you over the past months. I wanted you to double your vote. I'm asking you to double your vote, Jake. If you say you want to try to get rid of Trump, get rid of Trump.
I think I've always said I supported horse in suit.
I know.
John, if a ballot is sent to my dead grandmother, I will fill it out for Kamala. Okay.
That's voter fraud. Stop it.
Voter fraud. Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, come on, Tony, double your vote. You're already going to do that. Come on, Jake, double your vote.
Hey, I had a friend of mine once commit voter fraud in Colorado. And I remember when somebody said it never happens, and I'm like, I know it happened. I had a friend who did it.
But I mean, for their spouse or their daughter out in college?
They were registered to vote, and they were going to school in Colorado, and they still got a California ballot that was, and they filled out both ballots and voted in both states. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now the FBI is after your friend. Thanks for outing them.
Yeah.
Well, the FBI actually heard what Jake said and is after Jake right now, dude.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think it's funny because I don't know if they would go after her or her mom, because they were her ballots and her mom was the one who did it. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yikes! Well, outed your friend's mom. So Professor, I have is no surprise, and you do it all the time too. Try to figure out how you can maximize your time and how to be effective with people. And sometimes I'm pretty insistent, like Jake, vote for Harris, and that may turn him off because he goes, God, he's a jerk. Now I'm going to definitely write in the. You know what I mean? I want to maximize my time with my words, my writing, my effort. And I'm enthusiastic about whatever's going to happen, because even if Trump wins again, I'm going to be kind of bummed. But I want to be shocked. but I'm going to be kind of bummed. But that's going to last a day or a week or a month. And if he comes out because he wants to prosecute all his enemies, well, then I'm going to be more bummed and I'm going to be more adamant. But the bottom line is, I don't think the world's going to end. So I want to figure out how to be productive in a different way than we've been in the last 3 years. And so you'll debate Professor Katzum next week. But more important than who wins the presidency, I want to empower more, excite more, intrigue more citizens to be engaged and involved, like we've been pretty engaged and involved over the years. That's the reason we met. The American Enterprise Institute thought that real change only happens on the ground with people like us, not in some DC think tank. And so will you ponder, if you have a gut reaction now, that's fine, but will you ponder on how we can be as effective as we possibly can be without going the entertainment news cycle crap that's all over the place? And then we're going to vote. So finish us up, and then we're going
to. Let me. I'll quote Calvin Coolidge, and I'll also sound like a hippie. So Coolidge said, "There's no way that you can that the duties of a citizen can ever be transferred to the government." Meaning, there are some things that the citizen must do. And in your personal life, there is no way to outsource love either. There is no way that you can outsource love for individual people out beyond your immediate sphere. And I always quote, the same Theodore Roosevelt, letters to Upton Sinclair and Lincoln Steffens that, Theodore Roosevelt said, "I don't care for the churchman who fights the devil in the abstract." What we have to do is every day we just do our duty in the plain, simple way that it appears before us. And those are the people who make real change in society.
Love that. And so we're doing the best we can right now.
We're doing the thing. Yeah. We're doing it in the only way in which it's effective. And you look at our numbers and you say our numbers are small, but we could have 16 million listeners and nothing would change. But I bet anyone who's still listening and participating in civic life, like they're the ones who are actually doing it. They're actually making society better. So I'd rather have one person, taking care of his street than 16 million people patting themselves on the back and calling themselves heroes for doing nothing.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Tony, did you want to jump in? Right. We're going to finish right now, but did you want to jump in?
No, I was good. I just was taking it off to say I'm good. All's good.
Okay. Well, we got to do a vote real quick, and we got to guess on what Jake wants to do: public or private.
Well, I don't care if anybody hears. I didn't say anything that offensive.
Well, help have this conversation out in the blogosphere.
I say public.
Public. What do you think, Professor?
Public.
All right. We're going public. Or I'm going to guess Jake would rather it be out there and whether people listen to it or not. But you had a couple really interesting zinger quotes in this today. So I'm glad you're going public. And Tony, ponder with me how we can pull some of those out in like a 15-second thing rather than an hour and 15-minute thing. Anyway, Professor, thanks for your time. Tony, hope to see you next week. It should be a great discussion next week. So I really appreciate your time all.
Cheers.
Right on. Good to see you guys.
Happy voting.